Hi everyone. So I am going to make for you my lemon blueberry scones, and this is kind of a little bit of an iced scone. So we're going to do a small little icing at the end, but this is the process. And I'm back in the kitchen. I made these the other day and posted them on Instagram, and everybody was asking for the YouTube video, which I didn't have. So here we go. Just grab a medium-sized bowl, and I'm just going to be working with 1 cup measuring cup and a approximate teaspoon type size spoon. We're going to go ahead and start with 2 cups of flour. Scones basically just are flour, butter, cream, and some other stuff, but all scones are going to have flour, butter, and cream, and probably an egg, depending. Some people make their scones without the egg. I like scones with an egg. So start with a couple scoops of flour, just all-purpose. I use gold medal flour. You can use whatever kind of all-purpose unbleached flour. And then you are going to also add some sugar. We are not going to add a lot of sugar just because scones are not super sweet, and I don't like super sweet things. So this is about a quarter a cup or so of sugar, and we're going to also add some baking powder. I like to use the Clabber Girl baking powder just because it doesn't clump as much as some of those off-brand baking powders. Nonetheless, always feel of it in your hand. Make sure that there aren't any clumps. Nothing worse than getting a big chunk of baking powder. So a couple teaspoons of the baking powder, and then a little bit of salt, not a lot of salt, but just kind of, you know, maybe half or a third, somewhere between a quarter and a half a teaspoon there, just a little pinch of salt. We're going to go ahead and just whisk those together. I like to do it with my fingers. Of course, clean your hands before starting, just so you can really feel that everything is mixed in together really well. And then what you're gonna need is some butter. You want your butter to be cold, not warm, not room temperature either. You want it to be nice and cuttable, hard and cuttable. So we're going to go ahead and use 3/4 of this, or 6 tablespoons at the 6 tablespoon mark. So every stick is going to have about 8 tablespoons. We're going to cut that off at about 6. And we're going to just cut this into pieces into your flour mixture. Now, making scones is a lot like making biscuits, which is also a lot like making pie. We are going to use today a pastry cutter. You can also just use 2 knives if you don't want to use a pastry cutter. So you cut that butter into pieces. You're going to then just, using your pastry cutter, I love to use a pastry cutter for pies as well. It works great with butter. It works great with Crisco. Just go ahead and cut that butter into the flour mixture until it's in little pea-sized, smaller pieces, like the size of a little pea, or you know, you don't have to cut it till it's like grains of sand or anything crazy. Basically, we're just going to make sure that we don't have any big pieces, big chunks left in there. But this is why you want your butter to be cold, because if it's too warm, it's going to just kind of squish. It's not going to really cut nicely into that flour mixture. So I just want to encourage all the bakers out there. I finally have found a way to lose the baby weight and still keep baking. One of the biggest keys to that is tracking my macros, which means fats, carbs, and protein, to keep those balanced so that when I do bake, you know, I might have a nice scone or 1.5 scones for breakfast with my coffee, and then that might be all the scones I eat that day, but I still get to have my scones or banana bread or lemon pound cake or honey buns or whatever else I feel like making, I can still have it. You can always freeze what you may not be eating in the next few days if you want to keep it fresh that way. So once your butter is cut in at about that level, so you can kind of see the mixture is even, but some of those little pieces of butter are about the size of a pea. So at that point, you are going to add your some lemon zest, which I'm going to zest this whole lemon. It has been washed. And you're also going to add some blueberries. I'm going to show you a couple tricks with the lemon zest and the blueberries because I grew up picking huckleberries, which are very similar to blueberries, only they're a little bit stronger flavor and they're wild. Sometimes when I get blueberries at the store, they still have the stems on. They still have those little blossom end things. I don't want any of that to be in my scones. So what we're gonna do first is we're actually gonna just go ahead and wash the blueberries. I'll try and turn the camera this way. And we have, of course, all this stuff now in view in the way. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and just wash those blueberries in the container because they don't have a little pad at the bottom in this container. So make sure that you wash them thoroughly. And then to get out those blossom ends and stems, I like to go ahead and pour them over a towel. Now the reason why this is important, if we can see this a little bit better, is because the towel is going to grab, as you can see, it already has these little teeny pieces of things. So as you roll the blueberries across, it's going to take out, you know, there's a leaf, things like that are going to just roll off of the blueberries. And those little annoying blossom ends, which look like this, if they're still attached, you can just pick those off. But this is basically how to clean blueberries. So you want to watch for any stems, you want to watch for those blossom ends and any leaves or any other little pieces of things. Also, if there are any blueberries that look less than desirable, like they're a little bit shriveled, a little bit old or whatever, discard those so that you end up with all nice clean blueberries. Okay, so we're then going to go ahead and roll those into, and those little pieces of things are going to just go ahead and stick onto the towel as we roll these berries into our flour mixture. Okay, and we're just going to kind of shake them around a little bit so that they are coated in the flour. This is going to help them from getting too juicy and smushing into the pastry. All right, next I am going to zest the lemon. And by zesting a lemon, I'm actually grating it on the small side, not on this side, but actually on the small grating side. And I'm gonna grate the whole lemon. I like a lot of lemon. I don't like just a little teeny bit of lemon. I like a lot of lemon flavor. I have never seen a blueberry scone recipe with as much lemon zest as I actually put into mine, but you know, hey, it might be out there. I like to use the zest of the whole lemon. So we're gonna go ahead and zest this thing. We're going to save the lemon because we want to use that lemon juice for the icing. The lemon juice is going to be actually the only liquid that you put into the icing, unless you want to add a little bit of vanilla, but that lemon juice really gives that icing glaze a nice bite to it. It cuts that sugary sweetness of the powdered sugar and really gives you some nice flavor, a nice finish. So you're gonna zest that whole thing till you don't see any more dark lemon rind. Okay, I zest a little bit too aggressively on that side, obviously. But anyway, so there's your lemon. You're going to have all this nice zest. And we're going to go ahead and just put all of that zest right into that same mixture and shake it around. And we'll use the same cutting board to actually cut the scones when we're ready to shape them and put them onto the baking sheet. I almost forgot, you should be heating your oven to 400. So don't forget that part. 400 degrees. So I'm gonna put that lemon zest in, and again, just kind of toss it lightly around. I like to feel what I'm doing, so that's why I do it with my hand. Always washing your hands in between. And we are going to go ahead and get ready to mix our wet ingredients for these scones. And the wet ingredients basically consist of heavy cream, an egg, some vanilla, and that is basically all that we're going to put in for our wet ingredients. So let me grab a little bowl. All right, so for the heavy cream and so on, we're gonna actually have, I like to start with about a cup of cream. You may not quite need a whole cup, but you also might need that whole cup. So when we're pouring in these wet ingredients, you want to pour it in just until it looks like it's going to toss right with the flour mixture. I have to open a new thing of cream because that cream was almost gone. All right, so cup of cream in there, and we're gonna add a little pour of vanilla, maybe a couple teaspoons or so, and an egg. Always make sure you crack that egg without any pieces of shell going into your mixture. Then you're gonna go ahead and grab a fork, spear the yolk of that egg, and just go ahead and whisk this in a circular motion so that the egg is completely beat into that heavy cream. Okay. You want to make sure you don't have like a area where it's all egg whites or where your yolk isn't broken up or whatever. Just beat it until that's all smooth. That is going to be your liquid mixture. So scones are super easy. Now we're going to take that flour mixture, and we have our liquid mixture, and we're just going to go ahead and pour that right over top. I'm pretty sure that's going to be the right amount. If you happen to need less of that liquid, like I said, sometimes depending on how you scooped your flour, you might need a little bit more, a little bit less. So just keep your little container of heavy cream on hand. Now you're going to very gently fold this. See how I'm folding in kind of this kind of a motion? I'm not stirring, and you definitely do not want to put this into an electric mixer. You will have stiff scones that will be awful. They'll be chewy and gross. The same with biscuits and pie crust. You want to handle that dough very carefully. You want it to be not even fully mixed. Like you can see a little bit of dry and wet is still kind of, surrounding each other. I'm going to grab my hands and just feel, those last little few dry crumbs from the bottom. Just kind of gently massage those up into the area of more wet ingredients, kind of turning it over by handfuls. So again, you want to give a lot of TLC to any kind of a pastry because you do not want to overwork any kind of pastry dough. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wash my hand off, and then we're going to butter our pan, and we're almost done. So yeah, this is a super quick, super easy, and very, very tasty thing to make. So grab a baking sheet. I happen to have some butter that's at room temperature, so I'm just going to go ahead and butter that pan. Just grab a little fingerful or so you can spread it onto that pan. And that is going to be what we're going to use for baking our scones. And again, you have set your oven to 400, so you should have your oven preheated by now to 400. We're going to return to our little baking sheet, and we're going to turn this out onto the baking sheet. And we basically, not a baking sheet, this is the cutting board actually. But I like using this instead of flour because you don't want to add, again, you don't want to add more flour. You don't want this to be too stiff. So what we're going to do is just form this. The way that the scones get that little triangle shape is just to kind of pat this into a circle. Okay, so you're going to kind of gently take, and again, we're not working the dough, we're not kneading it. We're just patting it into a circle, and we're then going to use a knife, and we're just going to cut it into those cute little triangles. Lots of hand washing going on with baking. So I like to just get a nice big knife and go ahead and cut in half, and then you're going to move it the other direction. If you want, you can flour your knife in between cuts just to make sure it doesn't stick. If it ran through a little thing of butter or so, you know, you could flour it to go through the next section. Flour it again to go through the next section if you need. So you're cutting it into halves, cutting it into then quarters. You're just basically going in halves and halves and then halves again, so that you end up with 8 little scones. Okay, so these are your scones, and we're going to go ahead and place these little guys on our greased baking sheet. Langston's home from school today. Wednesdays he has off of school, so he's tooling around in the background. And I like that scones are very forgiving. It doesn't really matter if they're exactly the same in terms of their size or whatever. They don't have to be, they're not like an exact formation like Christmas cookies or something. You don't have to really worry about them being exactly perfect, but we're gonna have those triangles. They will rise and change their shape slightly as they bake. So our last step before we bake those little babies is going to be to just brush the tops of them with some cream, and this just helps the scones not get too too dried out in the oven. So you're going to want to find a pastry brush. You're going to go back to your nice heavy cream. You can see I've got flour all over me, so there's that. Probably need to get an apron eventually. So just go ahead and dip your brush into the cream and brush just the tops of those scones with some cream. Again, this is not half and half, it's 100% cream, which is fine. Don't be scared of fat. Again, people pick and choose what they want to eat, you know, in their fat. You just have to work it into your day. So if you're trying to eat everything non-fat like I was doing before I actually lost weight, I was eating like very little fat and, you know, not enough protein and so forth. So you gotta, you know, just work it in and balance it out. So we've got the tops of those brushed with cream, and we are gonna then go ahead and pop them in the oven. And you're gonna start them on a medium rack, and then as they bake, we're gonna move them up just a little bit to a little bit higher. You can see in my oven, I don't know if you can really see, but there's a higher rack up there that for the last 10 minutes or so, we're gonna kind of move them up. So that is how I make my lemon blueberry scones, and I'm gonna come back with the little icing, and also when they're fully baked, we'll take them out of the oven and give them a little look. So here we have our citrus juicer, and I just went ahead and cut that zested lemon in half. We're gonna now juice it. This is an electric juicer, so it's kind of loud, kind of obnoxious, but it really works well. See, it like totally juices the whole lemon instead of those little handheld things. This is probably the best thing I've ever found at a yard sale. To be honest, I found this years ago at a yard sale. So there we go. You have now lemon juice in there, and we're going to go ahead and put that lemon juice into a little bowl full of powdered sugar and just stir it around, and you'll have your icing. So here is just CNH powdered sugar. Again, this is probably the best form of powdered sugar brand that does not clump. We're going to just go ahead and pour that lemon juice, some of the lemon juice, into there. We don't need all of it. You can save some for your water, your iced water, or make a little glass of lemonade, or whatever you want to do with the remaining lemon juice. You're going to just make this nice lemon glaze to top off your blueberry scones with. And if you want to add a little vanilla, you can. Just beware if you're adding the regular vanilla that's not clear, it will give a slightly gray tinge to your icing. So I just think it's a beautiful flavor, just with that super tart, citrusy, straight lemon juice and that powdered sugar. It's perfect. Like I said, you can add a little bit of vanilla if you want to pull the flavor in from the scones, but I think this is sufficient for sure. So you're just going to go ahead and stir that around. Again, I'm just using a fork. What you want to be able to do is get it to be something that you can kind of glaze back and forth like so on top of the scones. So just make sure that it does drip. It's not too thick. It also shouldn't be so thin that you're not going to get a nice little line going across the scones when you do glaze them. So should be about this type of consistency, and feel free to taste that. It is delicious just as it is. I'm gonna go ahead and put a little plastic wrap over the top of that so it doesn't get a crust on top while those scones are baking. And once they come out of the oven, we're going to just glaze them really quickly. This is a little bonus feature section. I told you about that lemon juice that you have left over. I like to use that to make a drink. That's quite a bit of lemon juice in that cup. So I'm going to grab some AHA. I know y'all gave me a hard time on Instagram for drinking Diet Dr. Pepper, but I do know about sparkling soda, yes. So yes, I do drink that from time to time. And just a little splash of some vodka. So we have some grapefruit. What is this? Orange and grapefruit, sparkling water, some lemon juice, and some pineapple vodka for a nice little refreshing. I'm waiting for my baking to finish type of drink. I like things sour, that has a lot of sour kick from that lemon juice, but you know, I like it like that. So if you like sour flavors, citrusy flavors, this is a nice little refreshing drink while you're waiting for the scones to bake, which I forgot to tell you. It's actually going to be about 15 minutes. You do want to be watching them. Unlike cakes and things, it's not going to actually bother your scones to peek on them from time to time. So go ahead and take a peek and see how they're doing. And it's going to be around 15 minutes, but you want to make sure that they are browned on the top as well as the bottom. The bottom doesn't need to get too brown, so I'm going to move those up in a little bit. About halfway through the baking, I'm going to pop them up to that upper rack, and that way they get nice and evenly brown on both sides. So this is what your scones should look like when you bring them from the middle rack to the top rack. So those scones are done. You want to turn your oven off, get those out, and go ahead and pop them onto, find a spatula here, plop them onto your cooling rack. The blueberries will stick a little bit to the surface of the pan, so just be sure to gently kind of work them loose with your spatula. I feel like these had about 30 seconds too long in the oven just because I was trying to get Langston's little hot pocket. Then we are going to go ahead and glaze them with the lemon glaze. And then these will be ready to eat. We just want to glaze over the top, kind of in a line pattern. You're not frosting the entire thing, but you're giving a nice little flavor of that citrus glaze. And there you have your blueberry lemon scones. So scones are always best straight out of the oven while they're warm, but if you do wrap these in either a Ziploc bag or some kind of a nice tightly sealed bag, they can last for up to a week or so. I do a giveaway actually on my Instagram. Rachel A. Dolezal is the handle for that, and the giveaway that I do is once a month. So I'm actually giving away these scones on my Instagram. So anything that can ship in a couple days or 3 days is something that I can give away, you know, baking wise, so it's still fresh when it arrives, hopefully, if the post office doesn't take too long. So these are the scones. These are how they turned out. And once again, you know, just use that little lemon glaze on top. It gives it a nice little kick. You can substitute cranberries for those blueberries and then do like a little orange glaze as a different twist. You use orange zest in the scones and then do the orange glaze on top with the orange juice from the orange. So yeah, just a couple little options for you there, but I hope you enjoy this recipe, and I will be back to share more when I get time.